the stealth sound effect goes off. And okay, see if this stuff is up and running. Okay, looks like everything is up and running now. They're making changes and stuff on Rumble Studios, so uh,
Uh-oh.
I just noticed they're making it sounds good on Rumble. Let me go in here and hit refresh
Oh,
on YouTube.
none of us like change.
Oh,
We don't like things to be different.
well, change is okay if it's not constant. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I just noticed like
But it always is. Things seem to change all the time. That's one of the things that they mention in Buddhism is when, one of the problems is we cling to things that change.
mm,
They're inconstant. They're constantly changing and constantly changing. Everything changes. Sometimes it's slowly, but even that'll catch up with us eventually.
yeah.
I just think of my back. The last 30, 40 years, it's like, yeah, it's changed.
Talking about all this change, yeah, make me my
30,
back
40
feel.
years, it's like, yeah.
Okay, so
Well,
we're good on Kick. We are good on YouTube. We are good on Rumble as well.
where
I
do you think most people see us on?
I would say we get more views on or YouTube than we do any of the other ones. Now,
Huh. I guess,
Rumble, uh,
I guess the big name still draws,
yeah.
YouTube.
Well, also, my channel's not the biggest when it comes to channels. You know what I'm saying on Rumble, so it's not gonna get the amount of views as what we get on
Pushed out in the algorithm in the same way.
yeah. But even in that respect, though, I get a better perspective of it because I've also got Strange Stories on YouTube, which I can go, and it's a smaller channel. It's only got like 530 subscribers. So
Right.
I can see how many people watch at 530 subscribers compared to the Wonderful World of Weirdness on YouTube, which has a lot more.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Like
and
137,000 or something.
yeah, and it kind of gives me an idea of how much organic reach I'm getting from them because I don't put money into any of the streams. I just
Right.
run them organically.
Right. Right. That's the way to do it.
So and then like the vice versa with Rumble too. I can see the difference in the views on Rumble as well. So it's all it's all good. Okay,
Yeah.
we got everything set up.
Okay.
Next week I'll have the clouds for the background and everything.
Uh,
Bob Bob Dub wants a copy of it too, so I'm gonna send her some.
groovy. Groovy.
So,
That reminds me, before I forget, I've been talking about for a while getting a war story show going.
okay.
Maybe I'm thinking, that sounds like a good show for a Strange Stories
Yeah.
channel. We might do like a special or something. Because I
Okay.
don't really think it would fit in with this, and I'm not sure that it would fit in well with the Minds Roundtable. But maybe it needs its own little special if you're up to that.
Yeah. Well,
But
I
we'll talk
mean,
about that later. But
I've even got the storyteller too, if you want to do it
oh,
on
the
there.
storyteller. Oh, that might be. Yeah, yeah.
So,
Hmm. Well, don't let me forget. I want to talk to you about that later on. I just wanted to say it. I think of these things and then I'll forget them
okay.
for like a week, and then I'll say, "Oh yeah, I was going to mention that to Roger." So I tend to do things when I think of them
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they get done usually. It's like picking up your keys before you go out to the car.
Yep.
If I
Ex-
think about picking up my keys but I don't do it, then something in my head says, "All right, you've already thought about the keys," and I'll get out to the car and go, "Bloody heck, time to go back and get the keys." But if I do it when I think of it, even though I have to cross the room or stop doing something else, I go over and I'm like, "Oh, grab my keys." So,
okay.
all right. So we all set then?
Yeah, just I got to do the countdown and then
Okay.
you do your cool introduction. So
Yeah, they're all cool.
here we go. Three,
Okay.
2, 1, now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome aboard Flight 17 of Clandestine International Airline. I'm your captain, Captain Otto. And of course, we've got as co-pilot and electronics warfare officer, the great Roger Hansen, very skilled at his job. And we're just reaching our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet on our way to Shambhala International Airport at an undisclosed location somewhere in the Himalayan mountains, or possibly, excuse me, the Himalayan mountains. If you know how to pronounce that properly, please mention it in the comments. We're always ready to be corrected on these things. Looks like on the weather might be a tad of turbulence ahead, but I think we're up above that more or less. We've got our cloaking device on, and Roger is staying on that, although some of the countermeasures we've encountered lately are a little sophisticated. So we'll still take an eagle eye to make sure we get where we're going. So I'm going to, now that we're cruising, I'm going to turn off the seatbelt sign. You can unbuckle your seatbelts and light the smoking lamp. The smoking lamp is lit. Smoke them if you got them. And I'm going to now turn on the automatic pilot. And yeah, there we are. Hello, Roger. How's it going today?
It's going pretty good. Did some editing. I'm gonna have some new backgrounds put in for the show, so I was telling you that before before the show started. So I figured I'd mention that, tell you what's going on the show. So
Nice. Well, our viewers have something to look forward to next week then.
yeah.
We're always trying to improve the show, tweaking it here and there. You know, this is in many ways the nature of an artistic experiment, as well, of course, we're also trying to be entertaining and informative. And we're also learning as we go. And we're happy that everyone is here who is here that are part of that process. So, but I hope your weather is staying well, Roger.
Oh yeah, it was actually nice today. Today was the first day I could actually go outside on the back porch without my shirt on.
Wow. That
Oh,
is a sign of spring.
yeah.
That is
It
definitely a sign of spring on the way.
it
Yeah, we actually got up over 70 degrees today,
felt great, didn't it?
which is amazing because it wasn't that long ago that it was like 7 degrees below zero.
Yeah.
And that's Fahrenheit for our international audience, which I don't know what that is in centigrade or Celsius, whatever they call it these days, but it is um, mucho cold, as we say in Spanish. My Spanish isn't what it was, but yeah, today I was thinking of talking about though something came up recently in a an online discussion I was having, and it was with two of our mutual friends, my very good and admirable friend Bob Dub, Roberta, and the little bee shaman Satori D, uh, wonderful artist, amazing poet, uh, does some of the most amazing prompt sculpting with AI. Very gifted artist. I would advise everyone to check his work out as much as possible. But we were talking about this proverb that's been making the rounds lately, and you may have heard of it. It's usually said to be an African proverb, but nobody really knows where it comes from, and it sounds the sort of thing that any culture would come up with in one form or another. And the proverb is that a child that is not embraced by the village will burn that village down in order to feel its warmth. And the point of it is that many of us grow up with childhoods that do not nurture us in ways that we perhaps should have been nurtured, where somehow or other blocked out. There's a part of our experience that we don't have as children. We never really feel loved, and there are results of this that we see down the road. Um, People tend to, who have been deprived of love and affection as a child, tend to be over functioning. They make themselves dispensable. They always want to help other people because they feel their only worth is when other people approve of them. And they only ever got that approval as children when they did something. And, people like this tend to become caregivers. People go into human services, taking care of, developmental disabled people. They work in nursing homes. Many of them go into nursing or becoming doctors. And this is certainly helpful to society, but a lot of these guys doing this, many of them, perhaps most, are doing it. It's almost pathological. They're wonderful contributors to social health. I mean, my goodness, where would we be without people that were willing to put out that extra effort, willing to make those self-sacrifices? But it's coming out of a dysfunction. It's coming out of a pathological experience. And one aspect of this is that when these things happen to us as children, at least according to certain theorists, this causes physical changes. Physical changes in our bodies, the way our brains fire. I've talked a lot with people about, and Roberta's talked about this, damage to the adrenal gland. And, adrenaline is produced by the adrenal gland, and adrenaline is classically called the fight or flight hormone. Basically, it's the sort of thing that is released into our system when we need to be very alert very quickly, and it's designed for basically a primate walking down a forest trail and suddenly having a leopard jump out in front of them, sort of deal. It's designed to combat a physical necessity. It gets your body all ready to fight or to run when you need every ounce of energy, even though it's going to exhaust all your energy supplies in like 5 or 10 minutes. It turns you on. It's like overdrive, right? But when our adrenal glands are reacting not to a physical threat, but to mental formations, to the identities we take in our minds, as they call it in Buddhism, sometimes the becoming, just basically these situations in our heads, which are very powerful. It can lead to dysfunction because, I've said this before. An example is, and just a workaday example, not even anything particularly pathological, but say you're in an office, you work in an office somewhere, and your boss gets angry with you, perhaps raises his voice. Adrenaline takes over because you feel threatened. Now, rationally the boss is not going to kill you, and I hope not. It's not that kind of a job, I've worked in some odd places. But you are prepared to fight or to flee, but you can't. You're in an office. You can't punch the boss. You can't run out the door. I mean, you could do these things, but they're going to be very counterproductive. Instead, you have to absorb the physical reactions while maintaining an outer composure. And we all learn how to do this from the time we're children. And so you have this kind of adrenaline poisoning thing going on. You're getting all of these messages through your system saying that you have to prepare yourself for a physical encounter, that you have to fight, perhaps for your life, or you have to flee. And you can't do any of these things. So it's very harmful to our systems. And if you've been emotionally, physically, however abused you want to be, and this is a sliding scale. Although I don't, you can't say one thing is quote unquote worse than something else, but there's so many ways that we can be harmed, especially when we're young, especially when we're children. Neglect, punishments, abuse of other sorts, physical abuse. These things can cause changes, apparently, in our physiology. And as has been said, if you lose a limb, it doesn't regrow. This is supposed to be permanent. So if your adrenal gland is damaged, it does not regain its function. You can't fix it, quote unquote. And I've always found this, I've never liked this, and I've had a lot of resistance to this idea. because it's so, it seems very deterministic. It seems very reductionist. And I shy away from determinism and reductionism because that's saying to me, you know, I've had a very terrible childhood. My adrenal gland, for example, is damaged. It will not function again. And my first thought is, well, how can I get it to function properly then? So that it's repaired, so that I don't have to cope with these wild hormonal surges at inappropriate times. And the answer is you can't. So from that, I just took, whoa, well, okay, the message here is you're basically broken, right? You can't do anything, so don't bother to do anything. Just be that way. And I never liked that. It always seemed like a message of hopelessness and helplessness. But in the discussion today with Roberta and Satori, they took it a little further, further in ways that I've kind of shied away from going, that I haven't really looked at too hard. And basically, I'm gonna, you know, the best thing I can do is quote here. This is something that Bob said to me earlier today. She wrote, as Satori says, we are all fallen angels. Healing means picking yourself up, dusting yourself off, and limping on. An amputated limb does not regrow. A damaged adrenal gland does not regain function, so you do the best you can with what you have. And then she says, because life is short and death is a long, long time. Something that we can all agree with, more or less, even a Buddhist. And Satori chimes in with, and this is not this is not a new metaphor, but when life gives you lemons, you make lemon cakes or suck on them so you don't get scurvy. And he goes on, and I will read a little bit so that you can get a sense of his poetry. I cannot stress this enough, for he tries not to believe in anything, but I do have my, I should quote him, I try not to believe in anything, but I do have my suspicions. And things of the soul, the only thing that seems to help me feel whole, it's when I cut all those threads of illusions and turn all that soul-crushing thing of reality into obsidian butterflies, whole dark stars, those precious souls that are not here anymore. The ones you hold deep within, those dark stars will probably in the end collapse us under the weight of cosmic love. But then he says, healing is just dragging our dying corpse across the finish line. Death stalks us all paths are folly, so what does one do? The Toltec dreamer laughs and then cuts the self so that it can hear the heartbeat of the universe. So it has to do, I think, that, and things that are hitting me about this, and things that hit me about this, and I've been thinking about this all day, is that we do have aspects of ourselves. I'm getting to the Buddhist part here, if you're wondering about when the Buddhism's coming in, because I'm looking at this and I'm looking at it through my Buddhism, which has been a great support to me, and it is true that if we have a damaged adrenal gland, if we've lost a limb, we have any of these neurological changes in us, damage that is permanent, that cannot be quote unquote healed. This is inevitable. This is our karma, right? This is the result of everything that has happened to us up to now. And that's like the blockchain. It's written right in. You can't change any of that. But what Bob and Satori were saying, and I'm trying to phrase this in a Buddhist way, is it gets back to, we are not that thing. We are not this body. Okay. We are our intentions, our actions. Both of these are translated by the word karma. So when I say karma, I mean our intentions and our actions. And our actions are intentions, and our intentions are actions. Okay. So no matter what our situation is now, physically or mentally for that matter, no matter what we are now, we are also free now to have new and better intentions. You know, we're not a thing, we're an action, right? Actions can be changed. I do not have to act in accordance with my previous programming. I do not have to act in accordance with what I have thought up to now. I can instead look at things with a better framework, with a better way of defining things, with a better paradigm, and make my choices that way. And it gets back to what we were saying the other night, Raj, about the present moment is composed of the results of our previous intentions, actions, comma, whatever, everything that's happened to us, basically, right? Our current intentions, our current actions, and the results of those actions. Now, those results you can't change, right? And the previous results you can't change from previous intention, right? And also the results that you get now. But in the present moment, right now, you can change those intentions. You have control over that, no matter what your past comma is, no matter what your situation is now that's the result of the past things that have happened to you. The future is unwritten. The future is completely unwritten. And by not focusing on what has been and saying to yourself, this is the eternal template, I have to do that, that's just locking yourself in prison. That's just imprisoning yourself. And I think that's what Satori means when he's talking about cut, 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 cut. Although it's very difficult to understand the bee shaman sometimes. His poetic vocabulary is deep, and I have made something of a study of it, but it's like with all great thinkers, they have several levels of meaning. But we need to cut ourselves away from that. And in this moment, our present intention, our present action, our present comma, okay, our present being will change the future. So yeah, maybe we'll be dragging ourselves across the finish line without a leg. You know, Wooden Legs and Real Feet is a song I used to play, by the way. But we're doing it, we're getting there, and we're doing it the only way we can. And we're not letting what has been determine us. So that if I look back and say, if only my adrenal gland worked better, I wouldn't have all these problems. If only I had 2 legs, I could have run in the race. If only this, if only that. Well, my grandmother used to say that pigs could fly if only their mothers were canaries. You know, there's a point past which this is simply torturing ourselves. And we love to torture ourselves. We love being miserable. I've gone on before about country western music as an industry built upon people feeling miserable. They want to feel miserable. I know people that they go to their country western bar and plunk down their money, and they just want to cry a tear in their beer all night because they love feeling miserable. And it is not a bad thing to look at our past and say, I wish I had not done this. I want to do things differently, and I am going to resolve to do things differently from now on. And then you stop beating yourself up. That's the best thing you can do as a human. Because if you start beating yourself up over it, again, you're not here in the present. You're living in a fantasy world in which you're just making that mistake again and again and again and beating yourself up again and again and again. And this is one of the things that many abused people, I think, learn. One of the great controls is guilt, you know. They talk about shame-based versus guilt-based cultures a lot, sometimes in reference to Buddhism, in as much as that Buddhism is now prevalent in mostly East Asian countries. And the culture in East Asian countries is generally what they call a shame-based culture. And you can say, well, basically, you don't do something wrong because you would bring shame on your family. What would the neighbors think? What will your children, what will your descendants think? What will your ancestors think? You basically want to maintain that social integrity, and you want to have worth in the eyes of your peers. Guilt is a little more internal, and the thing about guilt is you feel bad for the act itself, and because the act itself is intrinsically bad. But another thing about guilt is if I can make you feel guilty about something, right? That means that you will obey me even if I'm not there. Now, shame is the sort of thing where it's very easy in these shame-based cultures. Well, nobody's looking, da 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 da. That's why you get some of these huge, huge problems over there. They have these scandals about high-level bribery and corruption, even in places where you think you wouldn't find it. For example, I'm thinking this was many years ago, and I don't remember the details exactly, but basically in Japan, there was this group that was associated with the Zen tea ceremony. Very respectable people. Turned out they were involved in some kind of real estate scam. And it's like, how could these people that are such very respectable, it was a shame, but nobody was watching, so they got away with it. And there have been some scandals in Thailand over monasteries in which the monastic hierarchy was involved in criminal enterprises and stuff like that. You're always going to have bad guys. But with a guilt-based culture, again, it's when you can really instill guilt in someone, there doesn't need to be anyone else around. They can be all by themselves on a desert island, but they're still not going to do so. I'm reminded of the story of the guy that was like all by himself in the jungle. He was the only Englishman there, and nobody cared, and nobody was near. But every night he would still dress for dinner because that's the way. And part of it was he was keeping the side up, but another part of it was he would feel really guilty if he didn't, as he'd been raised and taught, you don't do this. Don't make, would you really want to make me sad, Junior, if you did that? I hope you feel bad. So guilt is a great way to control people. It's a great way to control people. And I'm not saying it doesn't have, we don't want to be shameless. We want to have healthy shame and not shame in the sense of, feeling bad about yourself for no good reason, but more like there are things you would be ashamed to do. And because you're better than that, because you hold yourself to a higher standard. There's nothing wrong with that. But you do get, these things can be used to control people and especially children. And I'm really wandering around quite a bit today about that. But yeah, so when I heard about this, my first thought is recovery. How do we fix ourselves? And yet, it's not really about fixing. It's about being who we are. That's really the fix. The thing to fix isn't what happened to us. We can't fix that. The thing to fix is what we're doing now, what we're considering, where we're going. And the first thing we have to do is stop focusing on the past because the past isn't real. Can't point to it. Show me. Where is it? No, it's just a thought you're having now. The same with the future. It's a hope. It's not real. You can't point to it. Show me. No, it's not there. This is real. It's very real. This is powerful. It's very powerful. You have amazing power right now. And yet we wander away from it constantly. We spend 99% of our time making samsara, chasing our own thoughts around in circles. That's what samsara means. Wandering around, going around in circles. And then we blink and we're back here. And we're still sitting in our chairs. And the dog still needs to be fed, and the cat's litter box needs to be cleaned, and someone still needs to take out the trash. But we've been on Mars for the last hour and a half, So, yeah, we have power now. We can do a lot now. And until we learn to tap into that, we are apt to be the prey of the things that were done to us, the voices that were instilled into us, the training we were given to keep us in line. And we're always going to be looking for what we can't find. We're still going to be looking for those things that we were seeking 30, 40, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. We need to stop looking back there for them. We need to start looking today. And I think that's what I was going to say.
It's pretty good.
Just off the top of my head, I've been thinking about this for a while, and today was very hectic. A part of me is like thinking, what am I going to say now? What am I going to say tonight? Oh, my car is stuck. Oh, I had to. Oh, traffic.
it's weird how that works too. Like you had a hard, hectic day, and I mean, from my point of view, you wouldn't have brought this out if you didn't have that hard, hectic day. You know what I mean? It kind of created the environment to where you could come on the show and actually talk about that. So that's I.
Yeah, yeah. You know, everything is necessary for everything else to happen.
Mhm.
And you know, I think about that sometimes when I told you, I'm sure about this was months ago, but I was on the highway speeding along and almost got into a bad accident. There were some people by the side of the road, and I don't know what it was about, but somebody ran out into the road waving their arms in the middle of like, this was like everyone's going like 70, 75 miles an hour, and cars just started bucking and swerving all over the place. And I almost got hit by a truck. I didn't. But if everything I had done in my entire life up to that time had the timing off by like 1 second, I would have been in excuse me, I would have been in a really bad car crash. So I realized all those times I got stopped at stoplights that I was upset about, why wasn't it green? You know, all those times I stubbed my toe and got delayed, all the times I forgot my keys somewhere. Gosh, I'm kind of glad all that happened now, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty good. I
Yeah.
when you were talking about about the past and the present and everything, the one thing that really stood out to me was the saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that they had that I really held on to, and it's actually pretty cool. It's yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today's a gift, and that's why they call it the present.
I
So,
like that. That's
so
really good. That's very true.
the cool
That's
part
very true.
the cool part about it is uh it's not a saying that was brought created because with from like an intellectual or anything like it was writers, cartoonists, Eleanor Roosevelt, I believe, even said it at one point.
Nice.
It was a different variation of it, I'm sure,
Nice.
it really does help out, and I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to a lot of the stuff you were talking about. You know what I mean? Because you could get stuck into the past, and that's really where the guilt comes from. It's from your past.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a lot of guilt over stuff and shame, that's because you're not dealing with things that occurred in your past and learning to let go of it. Because three different there's three different phases of the process. First, you have to acknowledge it. Then you have to
Right.
freaking accept it, and then you have to let it go. You have to surrender it.
Yes.
And if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to live a life of guilt, shame, and remorse.
Hmm.
You know, so I mean, that's the way I've had to deal with it. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but
Yeah. No, it's true. And you know, the thing about the past is that we so often are looking to the past, and like you're saying, it's bringing us guilt and shame. How could I have done that? You know, I'd ruined this. This could have been that. This could have been this. And we look at these things we've done, situations that we've created for ourselves and for the people around us, and we don't want them to be. I mean, obviously, that's part of it. It's like, no, I really didn't want to do that. I'm really sorry I did that. I feel bad that I did that. And the trouble is, when we focus on it, we're there and we want to fix it, and we think we could have done this, but we really ultimately can't fix it. So this gets right into the Buddhist idea of clinging, craving, and clinging. You know, we crave to change this situation, and we cling to the idea that if only this, we could do that, but we're staring into that past that doesn't exist. So we're somewhere that isn't real, and we're trying to fix a problem that is no longer real, right? So
mm-hmm.
it's such a tough line because the other way people cope with this, and this goes into some of what you were saying, is they ignore it. Pretend it didn't happen. just block it away. And as you were saying, the first thing you have to do is admit to it being there and accept that, yeah, I did do this. We're extremists. We either want to like drench ourselves in self-pity or we want to ignore it. Hey, everything's fine. Ha ha ha. They're so well, too bad for them. Ha ha ha. Which is a false front. We have to look at it, regret it, say, I don't like that. And yes, recognize that it makes me feel bad, but then say, I can't change that. And we have to accept that we can't change that. And that's really tough because it's so tempting to go back and wallow in it, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and then we say, all right, I don't want this to happen, so I'm going to learn from this. I am going to resolve never to do this again. And we're not always successful at that either, as you know, as I know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we continue with this resolve, eventually we will change. It takes a long time, but again, I am comforted by the idea that we are determined by our actions. We are related through our actions. We're the heir of our actions. We are defined by our actions, and you can change your actions. Even if you
Right.
don't change your actions, you still know you can. And at least with me, I change a little, it doesn't work. I change a little more, change a little more. It's so slow, Raj. It's so slow. I always use the metaphor of a tree that I'll just like be walking through a woods and just walking right into a tree and banging my head on the tree and banging. And I'll do that for like years. I'll bang my head on the tree and suddenly I'll look up and say, oh my, I'm banging my head on the tree. This is dumb. And then I'll go back to banging my head on the tree for a couple more years. And it's like, yeah, this really is dumb. And then banging, maybe I shouldn't do this. And then like, turn 90 degrees and walk another direction. I'm probably into another tree, but at least I'm a little further, along. So it's not an overnight thing, and I think too many people are looking for like overnight success, but even a small thing can be so empowering because it helps us break that habit of dwelling too much on what we've done. Um,
For me, it goes even further. Like I was telling you, about the gift and stuff. Living in the present. Now, that's not just the guilt of the past, but you also have the anxieties of the future. And I think that's another thing that people have a hard time dealing with because they put too much stock into the future, and they don't realize that now here in the present is the most important time that you need to focus on because like I said, the past is history, the future is a mystery, and today is a present. It's a gift. So you need to learn how to focus on this moment and do the next right thing, do the task at hand. You know what I mean? And learn how to
yeah,
live like that because you can make goals all you want, just don't expect it to be the outcome you expect. And that brings you into another area like expectations. People set expectations that don't get met and then they're disappointed from it and they become anxious. You
yeah,
know. So I mean it's really important. And I know saying that both me and you know, because we talked about Shakespeare before, and it's to thine own self be true.
yeah,
That's another thing that I had to learn. That's very, very true. To thine own self be true.
yes, and difficult to do too.
Right. You have to be honest with yourself about your flaws and your values. And then right now, you know what I mean? You have to do it. And that's where the action thing comes into play for me. So and it's about acting with integrity, and it's uh, principles before personality. You don't you know have hard feelings towards somebody because of the way their personality is. It's you have a common goal and you try to work through things. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I think that personalities is really a big thing too that really messes people up on a personal level. That's where it really gets deep.
yeah. Well, you make a good point about the future too. I
Mhm.
was thinking when you said that. Um, yeah, and like you were saying about when you set expectations that you don't meet, and very often I think we set expectations that are too high for ourselves in the knowledge that we might very well not meet them. You know, we love to sabotage ourselves because
Mhm.
when we sabotage ourselves, then we don't have to do something. You know, a part of us is very lazy, and all this is very hard work, you know, making ourselves better and getting through life and everything. But if, oh, well, I failed at that, I better not even try. It's like an old script, an old groove that we just fall into. But that, yeah, you know, it's, but when you were talking about the future and how people need to look at the gift we have, the present, um, I'm reminded of something. I think it was Alan Watts who had his limitations, but was a very wise guy in many ways. Um, a wise guy. But he said one of the things he noticed about people is they spend all their time thinking about the future. Like, I want to do this. I want to have this possession. I want to have a car. I want to have a house. I want to have, you know, I want to have a pizza, right? They spend all this time and effort working and planning to get this. And they're thinking about it all the time and what they're going to get. Well, they finally get what they want. Once they have it, they're already thinking about the next thing. They're not really enjoying what they have here in the present, this gift, as you put it. They're just worried about what they don't have in the future and what they need to get. And they've got all this anxiety. I don't have this yet. I don't have that. Um, and that's something that in Buddhism, they talk about how, you know, we have these desires that we cling to. And very often, you know, we desire sensual pleasures, right? So anything that excites touch, taste, smell, feel. We desire perfumes and delicious food and all these things. These are all sensual desires. We can think about a meal we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner. You know, a week or so before when I was a kid. Oh, Thanksgiving! I knew my grandmother was going to be coming to visit, and my mom and her would get up at like 4 in the morning, start cooking. You have all these delicious smells. We'd be chased out of the kitchen. Don't run across the floor. You'll make my my cake fall and all that kind of stuff. Right. And you
Yeah.
spend all that time thinking about it. And then you get to the meal and you just eat it. And way too much of it, usually.
Mhm.
But spend more time and have more pleasure with thinking about these desires than actually fulfilling them. We spend 99% of our time with anything that we like, we spend thinking about it, you know?
Yep.
I can think about, actually, and a little plug, if anyone's there, I'm going to be playing an open mic with a couple of friends of mine tomorrow night. And part of me is like, wow, you know, we'll be playing, see my friends, da 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 da. And this, you know, I'm spending all this time thinking about that. Actually, playing is kind of a pain in the butt a lot of ways. You know, you got to get instruments, set up, sound check, you know, make sure everything's tuned. You're up there sweating. You hope you don't make any mistakes. You get down, and I mean, it's fun and everything, but so much of the fun is thinking about the things we're going to do, and it just goes to show where our heads are at because we're always in this little imaginary world. We're never in the present. You know, we're thinking about the future or the past, and they both both things make us unobservant. They make us inattentive to detail, and this can be a problem. This can be a problem.
Yeah, I do admit you are correct on a lot of that. You know, I've had to deal with a lot of that stuff just for the last 23 years. I actually had to count it up how many years it's been since I sobered up. I sobered up in 2003, and
Wow.
I'm like I had to sit and do the math because I forgot how long, you know, how many years it was. But
23, very good number.
23 years, man, and the thing that really stuck out to me in what you were saying there was like the lying to yourself. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I've done these shows with so many people, and there's so many of them that just flat out refuse to admit that you are capable of lying to yourself. You know what I mean? Like there's this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's our default position. That's our default position most of the time. We're always lying to ourselves, man.
Yeah.
That's why when you were talking about being to thine own self be true and talking about that important step, that is hard. That is very difficult because there's so much in ourselves that we're in complete denial about. There's so many things about ourselves that we feel we define ourselves. We define ourselves by these desires. We define ourselves uh, by things in us that are not very nice. Defilements, you would say in Buddhism, we define ourselves by our greed, by our anger. And look at the mainstream. I mean, most advertising is based on you identifying yourselves with with greed and gluttony and like all of the seven deadly sins. It's like obey your thirst. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Do what your these appetites tell you, and that'll make I'm the guy that obeys his thirst. You don't want that to be the basis of your self-worth. So when we're really trying to figure out what's going on, and when we're looking inside, it's so difficult. The hardest journey, the hardest work I've ever done is internal, is looking inside, and I'm still working on it. There's a lot. There's a lot. It's a lifelong process, but yeah, just that being truthful with yourself, it's tough. The fortunate thing is that even though you try to deceive yourself, even though you obfuscate things, even though you can be very subtle about lying to yourself, about misleading yourself, it's not quite a lie, I'm just misleading them a little, right? No matter how clever we are at fooling ourselves, we're not cleverer than ourselves.
That's right.
We can always outsmart ourselves. So, and these defilements and these negative aspects, they'll tell you, oh, you can't win. You can't win. Of course we can. Of course we can. And the God's willing, we will.
The thing that gets me about the principles over personality is like the personality. When you hear people say the word personality, what they're really saying is like when for everybody when it comes to their personality, that's really their ego and it's their pride. And usually when you live off of your personality, which is your ego and your pride, you want to usually lie or lash out, you know. And that's the first instinct that people usually do, and that's because they don't place their principles above their personalities. They do it vice versa. They live a life that is completely filled with just their ego and their temperament, and they're built up on pridefulness.
And they lash out in protection. They want to protect that because they know it's not real. They know it's very, very, very delicate. It's very fragile. And yeah, and that's the personality built up, like I was saying before, about those defilements, those negative feelings. I'm the guy that drinks a lot. I'm the guy that does all these drugs. I'm the guy that gets into fights. And I think, of course, part of them knows that this is just this little house of cards, and so yeah, they're going to lash out and defend their fragile little ego structure, because it's not built on anything but a set of this personality. It's just built up of all these tropes, all of these stereotypes, and all the things that they picked up from commercials and the people around them that were powerful. I mean, where did John Dillinger get his role models, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, even not just commercials, but I mean, for me personally, when I started looking in on myself, I started realizing that, okay, and I'm not big on the whole nature versus nurture thing either, but
Right.
like I actually did realize that when I was growing up, I was taught wrong. I had to learn, I had to relearn how to do the next right thing. You know what I mean? And that was the hardest part, but I had to live, like I said, with principles over personality. And even though personally I didn't feel that it was the thing that I wanted to do, I still did it because my principles override overrit they overridden my personality. You know what I mean? Even though
Right.
it didn't match with who I was or what I did, then that I still did it. Like
Yeah.
my sponsor told me every morning when I wake up, since I didn't have bad knees, I needed to try to. The first thing I needed to do is come off the bed, hit the floor with my knees, and do prayers. And I was not a prayer guy
Right.
at all. So, but even though he told me to, or even though I didn't want to do it because he told me to do it every morning, I made it a habit to try to pray before I got up out of bed. And eventually, it got to the point where the moment I woke up, my knees hit the floor
See, you
automatic.
could control that personality and mold it to something better principled
Hmm. And
through,
just that action, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
that's exactly what Aristotle said. He said, all excellence is through training. You repeat an excellent action again and again, and then it becomes your nature.
Hmm.
So that's conquering your personality. And I guess part of that for you, I would imagine, was you had to step back and say, I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah.
Ignore what the personality was. So I'm not going to pray. It reminds me of something C.S. Lewis said. I don't know if you read much of C.S. Lewis. Great guy. He wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but he wrote a lot of great nonfiction. The Great Divorce is a great little booklet by him. I would suggest anyone reading. It's about hell. Very interesting. He also wrote the Screw Tape Letters. Roger, you might get a really good kick out of those. Those were a series of letters from one demon, one devil, to another devil about situations on Earth. So it's like things going on from a devil's point of view. It's very odd. But he was a an atheist and an irreligious kind of a person, and he eventually came to religion. You know, he became very, very religious, very spiritual person, and he was very glad of it. But he was talking about, he'd been thinking about religion for a long time and this and that. And he said, finally, he decided to pray. And he hadn't prayed before. And he said, never was there a more reluctant worshiper who got down on his knees finally and prayed. And that was the beginning of a new life for him. One that was very positive for him and positive for all of his readers, too, I will say, because he produced some wonderful, beautiful work. Um, But yeah, that's what I thought, Roger. You and C.S. Lewis. So you're in good company. You're in good company, my friend.
I'll tell you one person that if anybody really wants to learn a lot about what I just said there, check out Burns Brady. This guy, he's out of Kentucky. I believe he's from Owensboro. He's one of the few people I can honestly say that knows how to um, practice these things in real life on a day-to-day basis. You know what I'm saying? He'll just spell it right out to you. His name's Burns Brady. One of the most amazing people I've ever met. And he's just an old redneck from Alcoholics
Nice.
Anonymous, and he has no problem with people hearing his last name. Just to make that clear, he'll
Okay.
he'll
Now,
tell you.
now, does he have a YouTube channel or something?
No, he does the circuit. He goes from place to place and treatment centers and everything, and he teaches
Nice.
people the 12 steps and stuff like
Nice.
that. He's a pretty cool guy. He's got his own books. Burns Brady. He goes by Burns B a lot too. So, but he talks about that stuff all the time, and he basically tells people to stop dwelling in what was or what might be. Be honest with yourself about who you are and what you value in life. And then he'll go on to say other stuff like, you know, well, first of all, act on those values that you
Right.
that you know what I mean. And whenever you do that even if your ego or like other people's opinions get in the way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's
That yeah, you know what? That reminds me of something they say in Buddhism about how, and you were talking about principles over personality too, suggested it. But when you're here now and you're not worried about the past or the future. Yeah, you're in this moment where everything is kind of suspended, but then that's where in Buddhism they call it mindfulness, which is keeping something in mind, keeping those principles in mind, so that you've got this present, you've got this power. What do you do with it? Well, you've got these principles. So you don't have to think about it. And in Buddhism, they have the further point about it is you apply these principles and you look at the results, and you're going to see, as people have been saying in Buddhism for 2,600 years, you will be happier when you do this. Your life will be better. And everything you've said to me about the 12-step program and other people I've known, I have a cousin of mine that the program helped immensely. Came to the same thing. Everyone I know that went through it with a contrite and full heart for it, have been much happier. Their lives work better because you've got better principles to use. These are proven. It's not anything that you have to guess about, but you can. The proof is in the pudding. Try it and see. If you honestly try and apply these things to your life, no matter where they come from, I think all paths have these positive aspects to them, because wise people all through history have looked at human problems and they've come up with similar solutions. This is how we do this. This is the best way we can use our minds to reduce our suffering, to make ourselves and everyone around us happier and better off. So I'm going to check out that guy, though. I'm sure that there's something on YouTube. I'm sure some people have
Oh,
found him.
most definitely. Most
guy out.
definitely. Now, with me, my whole goal and all of what you were talking about is three things, and it's been this way ever since not since I figured out what the heck I was doing, because that takes about 3 years of sobering up.
Right.
So, I mean, just so if anybody listens, they hear that, just understand for the first 3 years of your recovery, it's going to be rough. Okay. But after those 3 years, I started figuring out that there's only three things that I really, really wanted to work towards as goals. And that's, first of all, peace of mind. I wanted integrity. And then out of all of it, my life ended up showing authenticity. Everything was authentic. It wasn't me pretending. It wasn't people around me pretending. It was an authentic life. You know what I mean? So, and I that was actually given to me. You know what I mean? And that was because of the whole thing of be true to thyself. I mean, you know what I mean? Don't just be honest with yourself about who you are and
Right.
what you value in life, and it'll work out.
I think all those things support each other.
Mm-hmm.
You
They
know,
really do.
but it is that a very difficult thing to be honest with ourselves. It's so tough to do, and it's a long process. It doesn't happen quickly, and I think it's a constant process of staying honest with ourselves too. We can't let the guard down and slide back. I always said that you have to keep going, because if you stop, you think you're stopping, you're not. You're sliding back down.
Yeah.
You have to be in constant motion. And fortunately, though, after a certain point, you get momentum. So you just kind of, and you were talking about 3 years, and you've got the momentum up that you can start doing some serious work
Well,
on your mind.
not really. That was just the start. Let me 8 years. 8 years, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, my goodness, man, what the heck? When am I going to start learning stuff? And then, like, at 10 years, I'm like, hold on, dude. I did learn stuff. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need a little distance from stuff. Like, oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm like, wow. And when you're in the moment, that's the thing. It doesn't dawn on you. It just happens. You know what I mean? Like, you're not methodically pacing yourself, trying to make things happen the way you want it to. It just kind of happens, and you're not even realizing it until you look back and you reflect on it and you start seeing, hey, man, I'm changing.
I metaphor I use with that with Bob, we would talk a lot about the path. This is an old Eastern metaphor used in Buddhism, and you've got a path that you're following. And the path is, we're all on a path, and there are many paths. And some go to really nice places. Some might go to a nice lake with, nice trees, cool breeze. Other paths might go to a burning pit, where garbage is being burned and there's coals and this and that. Some paths lead off of cliffs. You want the path that's going to take you to the top to release. And the path, sometimes you're walking on hard stones, sometimes you're splashing through mud, sometimes you're climbing up rocks. And you're, as you say, you're in the moment, you're just looking at this path and you're saying, and then eventually, though, you'll stop and then you look back at how far you've gone. And that can actually even be a little scary. See, geez, bloody hell, I'm halfway up this mountain. You don't, it's, and while you're struggling, it's like, oh, this is so tough. But then you look back now, and, oh yeah, there's that mud pit I was stuck in for years. There's that other place, but you're right. Sometimes you need a little distance from things, and you have to take a breath and tell yourself, hey, you know what? Look at where I am now compared to where I was. I am making progress. It's not instantaneous. It's not when you want it. Like you said, it happens when it happens. But it does happen as long as we keep applying ourselves. And, as someone said to me, well, how long do I have to do this? It's like all the time. This is it. There isn't really anything. There's nothing else really to do with ourselves. And part of it, though, is like you were saying about getting into the habit of prayer. You have to get into the habit of these things. I have to get into the habit of meditating every day, breathing every day. I was thinking too, it's a good thing you weren't doing Buddhist prayers, because then you'd have to hit your knees and then you do a full genuflection and hit your forehead on the ground. So you get off lightly there, pal.
I've seen the videos. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. They do the full genuflection.
Yeah.
I've seen it. It's wonderful. I think I told you the story. I was staying out at a Buddhist monastery, and it was during a festival, Katina. It's a festival that has to do with originally it had to do with monks creating their robes, but it's now like a festival where lay people come and they present gifts of robes to the monks, and it's a big party and families all show up and everything. And I was in a room, and there was the abbot of the monastery. He's very, very wonderful gentleman, very nice guy. When I first arrived at the monastery, he handed me food with his own hands, which was a wonderful, wonderful welcome from him. But he's talking to this woman who's, she's this nice middle-aged woman, very respectable, and they're just chatting and talking. Maybe they were talking about a village they both used to live in. They were very friendly and they were very relaxed. And then suddenly it was time for her to give him this robe, and instantly their faces changed. They both looked very serious. She handed him the robe. She stepped back, did the full genuflection down to the ground, and got back up, and they said a few, and then suddenly they were back to laughing and smiling and everything. Just the way that the Buddhist clergy is just such a seamless part of the culture. It's like, this guy's my friend, but then suddenly, okay, now it's his function as a bhikkhu, as a monk. And they're very serious. They do all the things, but then right back to like happy laughing. It was really kind of a wonderful thing to see.
I never was able to go to a Buddhist monastery. I had an opportunity to go. What is that group called? The Hare Krishnas. That's Hindu, isn't it?
Oh, the Hare Krishnas. Yeah, they're that's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Yeah,
they're one of the few Hindu groups that actually proselytize. Most Hindus aren't that interested in getting converts, but those guys are out there. I don't know too much about them, but I'm sure they could be interesting. From what I know of their path, and I don't know much, so please correct me in the comments. I think their path is one of the heart, karuna. They just love Krishna. It's just like you devote yourself to the God and just do nothing but like this. It's sort of like, there are Christian mystics that do the same approach sort of thing. But if you get a chance to visit a Buddhist monastery, or hell, even a Hare Krishna group, I'm always interested in like other cultures, other religions, and things like that. I was at the monastery visiting my friend who was a monk out there. And I went out and stayed at the monastery twice, for a couple of weeks each time. And I didn't stay exclusively at the monastery. We actually did some traveling around, and we went camping one time. We actually went up to Mount Shasta to look for the hidden city.
I love
You
that
know that,
story.
you know that, yeah, the hidden city
Yeah.
in Mount Shasta. Yeah, and
Now,
we were looking for space aliens.
you wanted to be serious, so don't get me started.
Well, maybe we could have him and me on one of the shows that you're associated with that have more like
Yeah,
supernatural topics and things like that.
yeah, because
But
I really do like talking about Mount Shasta. Just that.
yeah, well, we were there. We were there. We also went camping up near Lake Tahoe one year. That was pretty fun.
Oh
That was
wow.
pretty fun. Yeah, yeah. We had to find some place where they didn't have a fire ban because we were doing outdoor camping without tents. So it was just like when we were leaving the monastery and the abbot said, "Where you guys going?" And Panabasa said, it was Panabasa Bhikkhu then. He said, "We're going on a Dukkha Acharya retreat," and he just laughed. Dukkha Acharya is learning through suffering. So we're going to go and camp without any tent or anything. It's out in the cold, and our only warmth was building fires. But it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun, and yeah, it was cool. So,
It's pretty nice. Now, if you ever get a chance to go to the Oregon caves, man, I suggest that. I've heard and seen a lot of footage on that, and that is actually pretty cool. And it's not too far from where Mount Shasta and all that is either. So
oh, nice.
yeah,
I don't know if I'm ever going to get out to California again, but if I do, I'll check it out.
it's
We've got some caving systems around here, and oh, what's that really big cave system? They took me there as a kid. Um, Majestic Caves? No, I can't think of the name of it now. Hell's Caverns? It was a big one. They filmed movies and stuff in there. I think that's where they filmed Zontar, Thing from Venus. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Xantar. I used to watch the cartoon. I made fun of it kind of because he seemed to look a lot like He-Man.
Oh, this was an old black and white. Was it black and
Yeah.
white? It's an old movie, and it was about this scientist that was in touch with Venus, the planet Venus,
Mhm.
and he was in communication with this guy named Zontar from Venus, right? And he was like, "Zontar's my friend. He's my only pal. I'm gonna take over the world, and I'll be running everything." It was just like Zontar will fix everything. It's very very bizarre. I love those old movies. I love those old movies.
I was
Uh,
mistaken, and I remember Xantar being in the '80s where it was a cartoon when I was a
oh, I think
kid.
that's a different character. I think that's a different character. I think I know who you're talking about there, though. But
Mm.
that was a different. Yeah, this was like I don't remember who was in it. There's this one actor in there. He was always in these weird movies. The kind of stuff that uh, what's his name there, Corbin would make. Buckets of blood, stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean they're so ridiculous, but they're fun to watch. Uh, yeah, we have to start doing in-flight movies here on our Hannibal 17 ship. Um,
That would
and
be
you know, Rod, I
excellent.
think I am getting some signals. Yep, there's a signal from Shambhala International Airport. They announced they're going to be opening the secret doors soon. So I think we're going to be wrapping up this episode here pretty shortly.
Let me grab my
Before we do,
seatbelt.
oh, you better. Yeah, I'm going to light the seatbelt light, and please return your seats to an upright position. The smoking lamp is now turned off. Stewards will be by to collect your rolling papers, hash pipes, or any other paraphernalia. Before we turn off the automatic pilot, Roger, would you like to share your socials with everyone so they can contact you if they feel they should?
Yeah, you can find me at Roger Hanson or Roger Hanson at ROGLOL1973 on X. You can also find me at Roger_Hanson on Minds.com. I also have a Discord channel called The Wonderful World of Weirdness where you can contact me. And you can also find me at Rogers Hangout on Teams, as well as Live with Roger Hansen or Rogers Hangout now on Elements Matrix. That's it.
Excellent. Well, I am to be found at Rogers Hangout, and actually, if you contact Roger, you can probably contact me. Otherwise, check out my website, navakavada.org. That's Navakavada. It's spelled just like it sounds. I'm also on minds.com as Otto X, and it's Otto_X. And we've got a Navakavada YouTube channel and a BitChute channel. The BitChute channel are older videos, but I think there's some really good ones there, including some nice interviews. And that's about it for me. So I'm going to switch off the automatic pilot and begin our descent toward Shambhala International Airport. Those of you that are continuing on to Agartha, please remain in your seats. Everybody else can deboard then. So thanks everyone for being here. Thank you especially Roger, our co-pilot and electronics warfare officer. And hopefully we will see you all next week. Thank you for flying Clandestine International Airline.